With each passing Star Wars show, it seems as if midichlorians are becoming more and more important. They were first shown to us in The Phantom Menace and now are in The Bad Batch in connection with Palpatine and Omega. But what exactly are midichlorians and why are they now becoming so important to Star Wars? So join me as we answer that question in today's video. But first, what are midichlorians? Midichlorians were first introduced to us in The Phantom Menace in 1999, and they're described by Qui-Gon Jinn as microscopic organisms that live inside all living things, and essentially are what gives people the Force, and life would not exist without it. And the midichlorian count, or M count, varies from person to person, such as Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. While Anakin had an incredibly high M count, Obi-Wan had a very low count, but was still Force sensitive, and to many casual viewers, that's all that it was. But we are not casual viewers, we are nerds, and thanks to an interview with George Lucas, we get an in-depth answer on what they were. According to him, they are the cosmology, the Force is energy, the fuel, and without it, everything would fall apart. The Force is a metaphor for God, and God is essentially unknowable. But behind it is another metaphor, which fits so well into the movie that I couldn't resist it. And George goes on to say that midichlorians are equivalent to the mitochondria inside of living organisms and photosynthesis in plants. He simply combined them for consumption by the viewer. Mitochondria creates chemical energy that turns one cell into two cells. He says he likes to think of it as a unified reality to life that exists everywhere in the universe, that controls things, but you can also control it. What that last part means is basically anyone can use the Force, but not everyone can hear its calling. He continues with, you have to be found and fostered. If you have more than a certain number of midichlorians, you can become a Jedi. The Jedi will train you to connect to your personal Force, and then to connect to the cosmic Force. You don't have much power to control the cosmic Force, but you can make use of it. The Jedi, by nature of their genetics, have more midichlorians than most people, but there is not a direct connection between our human world and the microscopic world, which means that the Jedi only train people with a high midichlorian count, as we saw with Anakin. This is because those types of people can be trained in the Force and use it, while others cannot. So what does all of this mean? In a simplified version of what he said, the Force is like a mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell and the power of all living things. And without the mitochondria, there would be no life and no energy. And when he said the Force is a metaphor for God, that basically means the Force, aka God, is so well known, but we actually know very little about them. Besides that, they are the reason all life exists. The Force lives in all things, but not all can hear its calling. Only a certain few can hear it naturally, and those people can do stuff that people without a high M count can only dream of, like having heightened senses, extreme agility, and being able to move stuff with their mind. But George also said that you can't control it, which tells us that anyone can use the Force. It is not limited to a select few, but it's much harder for the vast majority of people to utilize it and understand the Force. And now that we know what midichlorians are and what the Force uses them for, why are they now so important to Star Wars? Well, it's actually because of the sequels. Originally, they were going to be more explored in George Lucas's original sequel trilogy. That would have showed us that they control everything and that every decision made in the entirety of Star Wars was made by the midichlorians, aka the will of the Force, which kind of takes the meaning out of everything when you find out that the main characters were just hosts of microscopic organisms controlling everything. But the reason they're so important now is because of the return of Palpatine. Yup, that's right, somehow Palpatine returned once again. Now, when this first happened, everybody and their dogs were confused as heck, and rightfully so. This made absolutely no sense. There was no build-up to this in any previous movie. It kind of just seemed like it was put in there at the last moment, which it kind of was. And the movie's explanation of this was that the dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural, which is a super cool line, but tells us virtually nothing about how he returned. And so to better explain this to us, they reintroduced cloning to Star Wars through The Mandalorian and Bad Batch. And at first, it just seemed like they were trying to clone Palpatine with a regular host, and that was failing, as we've seen with The Rise of Skywalker. But as the show progressed, we saw that they were needing blood, specifically blood with high M counts from Force sensitives, to fuse with Palpatine to form a suitable host for the Emperor, which is why the Empire was after Grogu in The Mandalorian and Omega in The Bad Batch, along with other Force sensitives. But as we've seen, Omega is nowhere near as Force sensitive as other people, which does include babies who can lift stuff with their minds as infants. This leads us to believe that the midichlorian count in people doesn't always mean that they can do what a Jedi or Sith does, but rather they just have a high M count but really can't do anything with it. But then again, I could be wrong on that part. And as we know, the cloning tests with Palpatine do fail. As much as I hate to say it, all of these shows are leading up to the return of Palpatine and The Rise of Skywalker. I mean, then again, that was kind of obvious when the codename introduced to us in Mandalorian was Project Necromancer, which literally means returning from the dead. But anyway, that is the basic rundown of what midichlorians are and why they are so important. And the new weekly comment of this week goes out to Lightwalker10. Thank you for the support. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to like and subscribe and comment your thoughts on midichlorians. And with that, my fellow Star Wars nerds, may the Force be with you.